So I served as a special agent for 27 years.
Wow.
It's a long time again, right? Long time. And in that capacity of working as a special agent, at the beginning, the department that I worked under was the Department of Justice. And then after September 11, my agency ended up moving to Homeland Security. So I did a lot of exciting things, not some of the things that you might picture in movies, but something similar to those things.
Mhm.
They just feel and look different. I worked human trafficking cases. I worked human smuggling cases, white collar crime, fraud, you name it. I was part of task forces. And just like in the military, I was at least at the beginning of my career, I was one of very few women. So in both careers, I faced I don't want to say the minority, but I was part of the minority group. I was the immigrant of culturally, right? I was also the immigrant, and my gender, there was a lot of thoughts of what my gender, could do or not do in law enforcement. So I had a lot of obstacles, not so much in the Air Force when it comes to gender, but definitely in law enforcement.
I can imagine that. But it feels to me, as you're telling your story, like you have kind of a superpower when it comes to people. And that even though you may not have grown up here, something in you is super gifted at people, connecting with people. And do you think that helped you in law enforcement and military side? Because it seems natural to me that you'd be doing that.
I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Very much.
That's amazing. No, in law enforcement, it helped me with the individuals on the other side of the table, the people that we were arresting, the people that we were investigating. It helped me not take their human dignity away from them, and to respect the different roles. I'm on this side of the table, you're on that side. I have a job to do, and not ever take humanity out of the equation. I think that helped me, because even in my last assignment in law enforcement, I worked what is called internal affairs, or the Office of Professional Responsibility. And in that situation, the person on the other side of the table was a peer, was another agent, was another government employee.
Wow.
So in those situations, I tried to understand that I was talking to that amazing employee that went to an academy, earned their badge, was happy, proud to wear that badge, and then walk it back. Like, what happened in that amazing career? What choices did you make in that career? Never taking dignity away from them, but for them to understand that there was consequences for their own choices, no one else's.
Right.
Yeah. And then from the military side, what I was able to do as an enlisted advisor to some pretty amazing officers, leaders, was to also, maybe sometimes depending on who the leader is, because sometimes we communicate but we don't connect, is to bring humanity to the table.
That's good.
Right? Because sometimes the machine needs to keep going. The machine is well oiled to keep moving. But to bring the fact of single parenting, the fact of being burned out, the fact of toxic leadership, the fact that there is a ceiling in which I call it, just because of my studies with John Maxwell, the law of the lid, in which sometimes our leader, right, is right here and our capacity is here. And when that happens, then we're pushing against the lid that doesn't let us grow. And what do we do then? Or if we are that leader that's stuck down here, that's not creating room for people to grow, that's the other side of the coin. So I don't know. I love what I do.
Yeah, I know. So now it's led you into this whole career in your own company, doing leadership training. And, you know, how did you start that? And what are you doing with it now?
Well, it started when I was still in the military. And so I have always been a planner. Oh, and I tell people now, I say, your present circumstances do not dictate your future. And I say it all the time. But that's because I lived it. And that's because I live it today. My present circumstances at times were horrible. But I'm telling you, there was something inside me that said, it's temporary. I just kept saying that to myself over and over and over again until the storm was over. It's not that I just stayed in place. I was still actively trying to get out of a situation, but it was temporary. So now, or then, before I retire from the Air Force, these are the two things that, tell me if this makes sense. I had 2 years before I could retire from the Air Force and 3 years before I could retire from Homeland. Remember, I'm navigating 2 lanes.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to do something else. Like, what's the next chapter? I don't want to live in the past that I used to be a chief. I used to be a special agent. I want those chapters for them to stand on their own. So 2 years before Air Force ends and 3 years before Homeland ends, I ended up being certified under the mentorship of John Maxwell. And if anyone, if you or anyone knows who John Maxwell is, he's one of the leadership gurus of the world. And I thought, perfect. I want to be that. Again, proximity and modeling, right? So 2 years before I retired from the Air Force, I got certified as a professional speaker, as a coach, and also as a leadership trainer. And I thought, amazing. And I started putting the pieces down, even then, on what my business was going to look like, what my business was going to do. And when I retired from the Air Force and went back to finish my last year with Homeland Security, I asked for permission. I asked, I was used to 2 jobs anyway. So I asked permission to Homeland to allow me to have my own business for the last year of my commitment to them. And they agreed. So my last year was me doing my law enforcement job and also putting the pieces of the puzzle of how to become an entrepreneur. And that's how it started. And so fully having my business, like 100% my business, started in 2021, because that's when I retired from Homeland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so smart to do, because people sometimes do get hung up on like, oh my gosh, a chapter is ending, and either go, so I'm sure you've heard stories of people, they just aren't sure what to do next. Or they feel like they shouldn't work anymore. And then sometimes they miss that, being engaged with people. And so I think that's a great lesson for transitioning service members too. Because even though you didn't do active component the whole time, you, as a reservist, you have to have money coming in during the month. So you are fully engaged in a career plus your military side. And so I think if anybody can, if you're about to retire, about to transition out of the military, think about that. What is your next chapter going to be? Because it is important to plan ahead. It comes fast. Yeah. And so now with your business and coaching and doing everything leadership focused, you've written a book. And so I would love to hear about the book and what the purpose was behind writing that book. And I know you co-authored it with someone. Share a little bit about that.
Yes, again, in the same proximity and modeling environment of being a coach and a mentor, and being part of that John Maxwell family, I met someone that we knew each other by name in the Air Force. His name is Lefford Fate. He is a retired command chief. I think he retired out of Shaw Air Force Base, but he's also a speaker, coach, and trainer. And he trains people now. It's amazing that he trains people on how to do TED Talks. He's an amazing human, amazing friend. And because we were in the same environment, we started talking about writing a book. And we started talking about writing an Ericka book, like my story. Like how was it to be abandoned? How was it to walk to the United States? How was it to, and all those things, right? And at the time, I'm like, that sounds exciting. I want to do it. I want to do a book, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So then him, as my friend, said, well, let's do something Air Force because we know Air Force. And it's like, yes, let's do something together. And that's how the partnership of collaborating together happened, in which we both, he's African American from the South, so he had tons of stories of growing up in different environments in the South, what it was to be African American in the 80s in the Air Force. And so the combination of the two of us having just very unique perspectives of different situations was very attractive. So that's how the book is called Persistence. And we made the word persistence almost like an acronym, in which each word or each letter of the word is a different chapter in the book.
That's great.
So how we were brainstorming the book is going to be Lefford's stories and Ericka's stories. And the more we brainstormed about the book, we're like, you know what? Okay, cool that we have stories, but people need to listen, hear, read about other people. So how we ended up drafting or creating this book is by going back, and I know that is it's Air Force, but leadership is leadership, no matter if you wear the uniform or not. And what Lefford and I did is we selected individuals in the Air Force. They were all chiefs, different levels. So squadron chiefs, number Air Force chiefs, people that worked in joint, chief master sergeants of the Air Force chiefs, right? We just filled that persistent acronym with amazing people, and we interview them.
That's great.
We interview them, and what we found in doing these interviews is that all of us had someone in our life, someone that was key in our life, that was able to shift and pivot how we were looking at things in order for us to have a successful military career. Because some of those individuals that we interviewed very early on in their careers, depending on, again, what baggage we brought into the military, were making good, bad, or ugly decisions about themselves. And there was always that person that shifted that mindset in order for them to become the leaders that they became in the military.
And that's so huge. And I know you know that ROA is developing a mentor program just for the Reserve and Guard. And you've been a huge part of providing feedback, and we really appreciate your time in that. I know you've been working with Susan and some other people from the team, and it's a unique, like you said, leadership is leadership. There are some unique challenges of the Reserve and Guard. And so did you find that as well as you're interviewing people, or more so just kind of a theme of like persistence, kind of overcoming challenges as they went along?
Well, we interviewed Command Chief Ron Anderson, who was the Command Chief for the National Guard when I was the Command Chief of the Reserve Component. And he brought to life what you just said, which is that it had being a reservist and being a guardsman brings just different things to the table. And because of the perspective of what we bring to the table, at times, not all the time, but at times, people, decision makers, see life from only one perspective, their own. I don't blame them, right? Because we all see life from our perspective. But what I ask is for people to be able to have the courage sometimes to get up, like for me, to get up and go to where you are and go, let me sit next to you because I don't see what you see. And for me to sit next to you, right? And go, oh, that's why. Instead of I thinking, or me thinking that you have two heads because of your message, like, do you not know that I also, right, on top of what you're saying, I also need to do this, this, and this? Do you know that? Well, if you haven't lived it, you don't.
Right.
And when I say, do you know that I have to do this, this, and this, and this? You don't understand fully what I'm saying because you haven't lived it.
Right.
So you can maybe go, sure, and put it to the side. And that's where that disconnect, that friction sometimes is developed because it's like you don't get me.
Yeah.